Hey everyone, how you doing? Hope you're enjoying the August UK weather. Sense the irony. I don't know, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not too good, is it? I'm going to start with a quote by Sitting Bull, famous Native American, who said that each of us have got two dogs inside us. And one of them is like a complainer, a moaner, a negative influence, and one is a positive, constructive influence. And he says, the one that wins is the one I feed the most. And I want to go back to something I touched in the previous podcast I did by myself called Why Are You Here? Because today I'm going to talk about mantras, and I'm going to tell you about mantras in a minute and things to get you through life. And Sitting Bull was right, and I've spoke often about thinking about who you spend most of the time with and what you spend doing. So we've been looking at things like social media. I have now left X, Twitter, and joined Blue Sky, and I've left TikTok because of A, what has been spread on X, Twitter, with the American presidential election coming up, and B, because of what's happened since the Southport murders. Now, I've wrote an essay about the Southport murders and the culture war on my blog, which you can access through the charity website, which is in the notes. And I did write some notes to do maybe a podcast on the Southport murders, but I'm too bothered by them. One, the tragedy of what happened, but talk about the two arrows, the Buddha's two arrows, where sometimes the way a situation is interpreted makes it worse, but also the terrible culture war we've seen since then, exacerbated on things like TikTok, X, and Twitter. Some of the stuff I've seen on there, I've had to leave those two social media sites because I don't want to feed that negative dog. And people come up with all these like big conspiracy theories and stuff. And I say to people who believe in these big grand conspiracy theories, because conspiracies do happen, but you don't need to make up conspiracy theories. There's enough bad stuff going on out there already. You don't need to make more up that are ridiculous. And that's where you need to be careful about how you are feeding the dogs that are inside you. So I've left those two. Think about the people who you spend time with and what you're doing most of the time. Are you receiving constructive information or destructive information? And I've had to unfollow lots of people as well on social media. I had a real big argument with someone recently about who seems to have become really far right. I'd say almost radicalized, saying things about the Southport murders. And although there's been a bit of a backlash against the backlash, the kind of racist far right backlash, and all the people who've jumped on that bandwagon and encouraged it, I don't really want to talk about the Southport murders, or other than to say how disappointed I've been with some of the things that have happened since then, which have just made things worse. And I think I'll just leave it at that. But just be careful, folks. You're not part of the problem, and that you're part of the solution. And at the end of the day, be a critical thinker. Yeah, get diverse opinions, but don't inundate yourself, and just think about what you're doing, particularly in terms of social media, etc., which I've spoken about extensively. So what are you feeding? Now, you can't just come up with like a little thing and go, I'm cured of all the things that are wrong with me. And I'm going to talk to you about mantras in a minute. And some people don't like mantras. You've got to do deep work on yourself. And I would say, go no further than reading Paul Coates' book, How to Solve Any Problem in Life. Do his online courses and realize the different things within yourself. Also, if you go through a difficult time, you see things differently. And in 2007, when I was really, really, really ill, that changed the way I viewed the world. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone or want to go through it again, but it really got me to appreciate the things I had in life. And since then, I've been on a journey to try and make myself better, to know myself and make myself better, improve myself. and then you can join groups with others to try and change things out in the world. But understanding how you are, I've done counselling a few times. I've read Paul Cope's book. I've read lots of books. I've done lots of work on understanding why we are the way we are. I've done things like meditation, yoga, used exercise. I've spoken about all these things before, but today I'm going to focus just on mantras. And I'll say one more thing about the aftermath of the Southport murders before I move on. And that is, I often hear people say or ask the question, what would you have done in Germany in the 1930s? And all I'm going to say is, now you know. And I'm going to leave it at that. In terms of mantras, a mantra is something you say to yourself, you can repeat to yourself. A bit like that wax on, wax off in the Karate Kid. If you keep doing something, practicing something, you internalize it and take it on board. And again, that is not a shortcut to the work you have to do on understanding yourself. So if you've got problems with addiction or adverse childhood experiences, or you've been through traumatic episodes, PTSD, etc., like coming up with a mantra isn't always going to be the solution. But I was speaking to a guy who's got PTSD recently, and I've spoken about this a few podcasts ago, and I just want to repeat it. And he says that when his negative brain kicks in, he actually says sometimes out loud in front of other people, "You're not helping." And quite a few people might say, "God, imagine seeing someone like that in the street." And I say, what's more important, the way other people think about you, or whether you're having a good life, a better life, like Aristotle said? Are you living a good life? What are you doing to move towards that? So good on that man for doing what he needs to do. And wisdom, I think, is where you get negative thoughts and negative feelings. You're not going to stop them. That's part of our evolutionary programming, and that's good. That's why we're here now. That's why you're listening to this now, because our ancestors learned to be cautious and think negatively. What's that over there? Where am I getting my water from? Are we going to get through the next winter? We worry about these things, and it keeps us alive. But as I've said 1,000 times, the mind is a good servant, but a poor master. And sometimes it goes too far. So, mantras, do you want to say in the street when your negative thoughts kick in? You're not helping, be quiet. Do it. Do it. I think people internalize or act out a lot of far more negative and stranger behaviors and make the world a bad place. So you do what you need to do. But I'm going to speak today briefly about mantras that I use day to day to help me get through difficult situations. And I've gone through quite a journey, and this changes all the time. And I write it down in my journal and practice, which I do every day, even if I think it. And sometimes it's literally a case of thinking about what happened that day, appreciating what went well, and then thinking, how would I have done that different to prepare you for things in the future? And internalizing that is true wisdom. Okay. It's okay saying, I know what I need to do, but it's actually doing it the next time. So you can come up with things like, oh, you need to be equanimous, equanimity, keep calm and carry on, all that stuff. But I'm going to tell you about what one famous Buddhist monk said, who I think he died a few weeks ago, or a few years ago, or fairly recently. And I can't remember his name, but check out this monk. He's got an app which was released with his work. So, and I'm just going to tell you what the name of the app is very briefly, and you can access some of the stuff that he says on there. And he's got loads of stuff on YouTube. And I'm going to mispronounce his name, so forgive me. But the app is called Plum Village. And this Buddhist monk said to something very, very, very interesting. And what he said was that you've always got your breath. You can always focus on your breath, which gets you almost out of your head. Yeah. People say go down into your heart or your stomach, away from your head and the chattering brain, which is quite negative. So the monk was called Thich Nhat Hanh, and Han is spelled H-A-N-H. And he said two things I've got my breath and my steps. If you're walking around, focus on the steps. If you're in a situation, focus on the breath. Get out of the head and the negative thoughts. And that is free, and it's there all the time. And that's what I've been using over the last few weeks, I think more successfully than anything else I've I've ever done in the past. And again, some of this you'll go, that's good, and you might take it on board, others it doesn't really register. That's the way it goes. It's like the parable of the sower. Sometimes the seeds drop on fertile ground, indifferent mixed ground. Size of my hand there. And if you're listening to this, I just held my hand close to the camera. And then the stony ground where nothing grows. Everyone's different. We all resonate on different frequencies. So, what are your steps? What's your breath? Are you there with those at any time to just go there away from the negative mind? Just drop into those particular feelings. The other thing I picked up recently is what's on your t-shirt. In other words, what are you saying to the world by your behavior at that particular moment? So you might have a family member or someone who winds you up a lot. What if you just stayed really calm and if necessary was assertive with them? And you said you were almost saying on your t-shirt, I stay calm. What a positive influence to everyone in the world, and most importantly, to yourself, training that muscle. I'm a positive person. What does it say on your t-shirt? Are you going round generally positive? Checking in with your breath, checking in with your steps. So just walk up the stairs and be mindful of my steps instead of thinking about that negative thing. So what does it say? How are you projecting yourself to the world? What are other people saying when they see you? Oh, is that negative person? Is that moaner? Oh, this person's a bit of a live wire. Now, we've all got idiosyncrasies. You shouldn't worry about what other people say, but you should be thinking about what you're projecting out into the world, because that is projecting your inner world. So get the inner world right and project a positive outer world to make the world a better place. The other thing I'm thinking about now is I read the Dhammapada, one of the Buddhist works, and it says, what is the mind saying? Watch the mind. What is the mind saying? And it ties in with the idea of metacognition, being aware of what you're thinking. So it's almost like dropping back. I almost think of it as going to the back of the head, or focusing on the breathing and the steps and saying, what am I feeling right now? What am I thinking right now? Is that positive? So find your own way. You might have a place you go to. I focus on that bit. And in some ways, one of the reasons why some people self-harm is because it takes the pain away from the inner world to a physical manifestation. And then people are in control of the pain and they're lessening the pain elsewhere. I think that's interesting. But can you do that in a positive sense by just going somewhere in your head without thinking of damaging it, or somewhere physically, to take the focus away from the negative, depressive, anxious mind, which isn't helping us? So, breath, steps. What does it say on your t-shirt? How are you projecting yourself to the world? What are you thinking in your mind? The other thing I do is I think about what Paul Cope said. I reckon I've got 5 different sub-personalities. 3 of them are positive or vanilla. 2 of them are quite negative. And when you're in that negative frame of mind, you can go, that person's on the mic. Thanks, you're trying to help me. I know you are, to these 2 negative sub-personalities. Let's get back to the middle or to the side that's more positive. Actually say that. Thanks for helping me. Yeah, you're there to help me. I know you're protecting me. You're making sure no one steps on my space. You're trying to make sure my ego isn't damaged, my needs aren't damaged, but you're not helping because you're taking it too far. So let's just get back to the other people being on the mic. It's almost just checking yourself, yeah? And the final thing I'm going to talk about is something called the Sedona Method, which was a podcast I did with Alex a few podcasts ago. Check it out, the Sedona Method one. And basically, the Sedona Method is asking yourself how you're feeling and asking yourself if you'd like to let that feeling go. And then almost feeling it physically in your body and then letting it go by thinking really wide and just letting it go to the edges. But I would ask you to check out the Sedona Method episode to check that out further. So to summarize, you're feeling stressed, you're not feeling good, focus on your breath. Get into the Wim Hof method if you're interested in breath or meditation apps. If you're walking around, use your steps. I'll just focus on my steps for a moment and my breath, or either or. just to get away from the negative brain. What's your mind? What's your mind thinking? Is it helping? What does it say on your t-shirt? How are you conducting yourself? Are you projecting positivity into the world? Reflecting inner positivity? And use the Sedona method to just let things go and think about who's on the mic. And that's what I do. Do I do all of them at the same time? No. But I use, I'm not feeling good here. Let's think about those particular mantras that I say. Okay? So find your own mantras, your personal little things. Some people call these things hacks, and I don't always agree with the idea of a hack because you have to put the work in to better yourself. But some hacks are useful and they can lead to long-term change. So have a little think about it. How are you projecting yourself out into the world? What's in your t-shirt? And get mindful. Use little techniques. Sedona Method, Paul Cope's approach, although that takes a bit of work, but I use that as a mantra now to think about who's on my mic, the 2 negative parts of my subpersonalities or the 3 positive ones. Watch the mind, what's in your t-shirt, think about the breath and the steps. Now, some people might say, oh, that's a little bit of a step up from where I am right now. What you've said is like for people who practice meditation and mindfulness, but find what works for you, get into stuff, get curious, because we are not living in a rehearsal. And regardless of the hand you've been dealt at birth or whatever, we have got neuroplasticity. We can get better. We can change how the brain works. Cheers, everyone. Take it easy and look after yourselves. One thing I want to say as well is I obviously want you to share, like, subscribe, etc. Do everything. I know I keep saying the word etc. in podcasts. Do whatever you can to help out with this project. Check out the charity where there's blogs and poetry and photography on there. Details in the notes. If you can make a contribution, the price of a cup of coffee once a month, that is a massive, massive help to this project. And also, I've introduced playlists on YouTube. So if you are having a particular issue, you can go through the playlist and see if there's particular things there that you might find useful. So you can listen to a few podcasts about that particular issue, people's experiences of going to therapy, or people's issues with self-esteem or whatever. Just go in there and look at the different headings, because it's over 120 podcasts now, so I've just put them into different playlists. Let me know what you think, and if you want to help out with the podcast and with North and South education, feel free. Look after yourselves, and don't forget your breath.